Hello, I'm Channing from CJ Games. In this video, I will explain the rules for Era of Atlantis. Era of Atlantis is an area control and worker placement game for 3 to 5 players and takes about 2 hours to play. In Era of Atlantis, you are a secret society controlling powerful nations during the mythical antediluvian age. You have 2 of these under your control and share each one with a rival. Working with and against your rivals, you must prove to be the most powerful secret society in the world before the Era of Atlantis ends in either glory or cataclysm. The objective of the game is to expand the power of both of the nations you control. You do this either by expanding to new areas or by constructing buildings. The lesser value of your 2 nations is your final score for the game. There are also ways to score some additional points for yourself only. The game is played over a variable number of rounds, with each player taking a single turn per round. On your turn, you select one of the free action spaces available to you, and you do that action. There are 2 ways to gain new areas for your nations, either militarily or politically. You can also switch control of the nations you control, but this is difficult. The better you can cooperate with your partners, the ones whom you share the nations with, the more likely the nations will thrive. With almost everything you are doing, though, you are helping other players, usually your partners. This is the board for the game, which depicts a map of the world 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age, with the north and south poles in different location. Also, the continent of Antarctica is further north and partially free of ice. That is supposedly where Atlantis is. The land is divided into 29 areas. The areas with the colored borders are the home areas of the major nations. The other named areas are the minor nations. And the third type of land area are the wildernesses, which are the forested areas with the tree icon in the middle. Then we also have the ocean zones. The oceans are divided into zones with these stormy waters depictions. The map also wraps around, so this area Paiti is connected to this area Atzlan via a land bridge. And also the Murian Ocean consists of 2 parts on the map, but is one area for the game. Each of the nation areas have a name, they have a power value, which is this number above the white wings. And the minor nations have a control spot to place a control marker. Each of these areas also have a marker where you place a property marker down for various areas, and these rectangular areas which are building spots for constructing buildings. Then there are the military units in the game. Each of the nations have its own warriors in its color. These are the single warrior pieces. The large warrior pieces count as 5 units each. These wooden pieces will be replaced by these minis in the final version of the game. Each player, as I said, already controls a secret society. With your secret society, you have a Virya track that goes from 0 to 22, which you can spend on your actions to enhance your actions. Each of the nation areas also has one of these counters with 2 numbers on it. The first number is the garrison value, which helps defend that area against military attacks. And a second number, which is the political stability value, which helps defend against political attacks. Then there are the buildings in the game. These are the building pieces. Each building must be placed on a building spot, and each building spot can have only 1 building. Building enhance the values of the nations, of the area they are in control in, or of the major nation whom they are controlled by. When doing the setup of the game, after you've done it a few times, you can use this setup guide, which is included in the game, to help you go through all the steps. First step is to place the board in the middle of the table. Put the round marker on the position 1 of the round track. Put the doom wave on the position of the track according to the number of players with the wave symbol. And put the end marker also on the position with the number of players and on the position with the number in this white square. Place the 9 Temple of Light buildings on the ascension track of the board, on the spots with the matching icons. Whenever a Temple of Light is needed for the map, take one of the bottommost pieces from here to place it. Whenever it is removed from the map, place it back here on one of the topmost empty spots. The top 4 Temple of Light spots need to be unlocked first before they can be used, using lost relics, as I will explain next. These small white cubes are lost relics, of which there are 8 in the game. At setup, place 1 on each of the 5 wilderness areas printed on the board. Then place the remaining 3 on the positions 9, 11, and 13 of the round track. Whenever troops enter such a wilderness area, or a game piece moves onto one of these positions of the round track, remove it and use it to unlock spots on the ascension track. For every 2 lost relics that are recovered from the map or the round track, unlock 1 Temple of Light spot on the ascension track, starting with the bottommost ones. The spots that need to be unlocked are marked with 2 white cube icons each. If you're playing with 3 or 4 players, some of the areas will be wildernesses instead of the normally depicted areas. Just put these markers on all the areas listed according to the setup guide. Then, if you're playing with 3 players, select 3 of these tiles that give special actions, or 4 if you're playing with 4 or 5 players. If you're playing an introductory game, just play without special actions entirely. Select all the special actions that you have for each area by taking all the action tiles that have the same symbol in the top left corner as on the tile on the property counter you see here. Then take the 3 or 4 property tiles for the special actions that you chose, put them in the cloth bag, and add a number of rectangular property tiles depending on the number of players. With 3 players, you add 6 of these to the bag. With 4 players, you add 8 of those to the bag. And with 5 players, you add 11 of those to the bag. Then shuffle the bag with all of the tiles, and then draw out a tile and place it on one of the minor nations in play into the empty property spot there. And draw another one and do it for the next area, and so on until all minor nations in play have 1 property counter. Then take all the pentagonal counters and put 1 in each of these spots on the board next to the home areas. Then put the number of units in each area according to the number of helmet symbols here, the unit symbols you see on the counters. In a game with 3 players, there is a 4th major nation. It cannot be controlled by the players and remains passive throughout the game. You see which one it is on the bottom half of the setup card that was drawn for this game. Place the control blocking marker on its major nation tile. Then place 5 units and the control marker of that nation in each of the 3 areas as listed on that setup card. Also take 3 agents, 1 numbered 3 and 2 numbered 2, of an unused player color, and randomly place 1 in each of those 3 areas. Take 1 building of each type except a Temple of Light and put them in the black bag. Draw 2 buildings from the bag and put them in the nation's home area. The remaining buildings go back to the supply. And put these scoring markers with a hole in them put them at the bottom of each scoring track for each major nation and the position that has a number, the lowest position that has a number. Then give the starting marker to one of the players. Each player takes one of these secret society tiles. If you're playing a standard game, it does not matter which color you pick. There are no differences. Take all the pieces of that color. Put the two large pawns in the top and the right corners. Put the small pawn that goes on the Virya track on position 6 of the Virya track. Then hand out these compensation counters that look like this. Do this in reverse turn order as follows. The player who was last in turn order gets no compensation tile. The player who was second to last gets the one with 3 Virya. The player who was third to last gets the one with 6 Virya. If you are playing with 4 or more players, then the next player gets the one with 9 Virya. And if with 5 players, the starting player gets the one with 12 Virya. Then take these objective cards, and if you're playing with 3 or 4 players, you need to remove some cards for the game. Take a set of 3 cards with each of the 3 types. Take 2 of such sets out of the game if you're playing with 3 players, and take only 1 set out if you're playing with 4 players. If you are not playing an introductory game, then place the objective card layout next to the board. Take 3 objective cards, 1 of each type, shuffle them, and place them face up on the 3 spots of the layout. Take the remaining cards, shuffle them, and deal 3 cards to each player. If you're playing an introductory game, only give 2 cards to each player. Then each player selects, if you're playing a regular game where every player got 3 cards, each player returns 1 card and keeps only 2 of those cards. Then players need to select the major nations they wish to control using a snake draft. Starting in turn order, each player takes one of their 2 colored cubes and places it one of the control spots that you see in the top right corner of the minor nation tiles. Everybody does that once in turn order. As soon as a number of minor nations are picked that is equal to the number of players, all the remaining major nations go out of the game and become wildernesses. This only happens if you're less with 5 players. So if you're playing with 5 players, there will be 5 major nations. If you're playing with 4 players, there will be 4 major nations. And if you're playing with 3 players, there will be 3 major nations. Then, once every player has selected placed their first cube, then in reverse turn order, every player places their second cube. Important thing to remember is you cannot have both of your control cubes on the same major nation. And also, this cannot happen during setup, but also not any time during the game. You cannot share the same 2 major nations with the same other player. So let's say I am orange. I control Brahmapura and Lemuria. Then Brahmapura and Lemuria could not also be controlled by the purple player. So I cannot share Brahmapura with the purple player and also share my other nation with the same other player, same player purple. That cannot happen during setup and cannot happen during the game. If a player cannot legally place one of his cubes, then the previous player who placed the cube must make a different choice instead so that you can place a legal cube. Once all players have selected their major nations, then, as I said, remove any other major nations from the game, placing wilderness tiles on them. And then in turn order, everybody places their 3 0 agents on the map. You only place them in minor nations or major nations. You don't place them in wilderness areas. Players take turn, beginning with the starting player and going around clockwise, each player taking a single turn per round until the game ends at the end of the round. On your turn, you take one of your 2 Archon pawns and place it on one of the free action spaces you control. These are the 3 action spaces on your Secret Society tile and the action spaces on the 2 major nation tiles of the 2 major nations you control. You can only place it on an action space that is free, where there's no other pawn, and you cannot select the same action space where the pawn started at the start of the turn. Also, if you have any of your archon pawns on their starting positions, you must select one of those archons before selecting any archons that are already on an action space. If an action space has a cost in Virya, that cost must be paid in full before doing the actions. And there are some action spaces which have a special effect marked with the yellow box, which modify that action in a certain way, which you can look up in the rulebook.
These rules are left out for an introductory game. The Repolarize action, the special actions, the objective card layout, and the compensation tiles.
I will now explain the various actions in the game. The first action I will explain is the Intrigue action, which you will find on the left side of your Secret Society tile. In the Intrigue action, you place your agents on the board, which are these square counters with a number on them. Each agent you place on the map costs 1 Virya, regardless of the value of the agent. You can place the agents in any nation areas, minor nations and major nations home areas, not into wilderness areas. As I said, each agent you place on the map costs 1 Virya, except for the agents with the value 0. You can place these for free. Also, any agents that were already on the map at the start of the turn, you can relocate for free to a different location. The next action I will explain is the Coup action. You will find the Coup action in the middle of your Secret Society tile. In the Coup action, you're trying to take over one of the areas on the map, a minor nation or a major nation, using your agents. You first select an area where you have at least one agent, and then you compare the total sum of those agents, the total of those values of those agents, with the political stability value of that area, which is the second number on the tile. If the sum of your agents exceeds the political stability value, then you have successfully taken over that area using your coup. You give that area then to one of the two major nations you control. So in this example, I control Brahmapura and I control Lemuria. I could choose to give it to Brahmapura. I place a control marker there in the control marker spot.
Adjust the power tracker of Brahmapura by increasing it by 1. The power tracks show the current power total of a major nation. Adjust them accordingly every time a major nation gains or loses power. These tracks are not authoritative though, so occasionally you may need to check if they accurately reflect the situation on the board. The counters with the Temple of Light icon are just an indicator to show what the power total of a major nation would be at the end of the game, after adding the bonuses for the Temples of Light. You can adjust these markers too accordingly during the game. There is also a +20 side on each marker, which you can use if the power total goes beyond the end of the track.
That is the easy case, if there's no opposing players. If, however, there are other players who also have an agent in that area, or if the area is already controlled by another major nation, then the coup attempt is opposed. Each player who is involved there takes their bidding dial and must bid. The players who are involved, as I said, every player who has an agent there is involved, and every player who controls the defending nation who is also involved. All involved players select their bidding dial to a number. If the player belongs to the defending side only, those players must select a number in the blue section to support the defending side. All the players who belong to the attacking side only select a number in the red section of the dial. All the players who want to stay out of the bidding contest select the white 0 in the middle of the dial. Note that each position on the dial costs a certain amount of Virya, which the player must be able to pay, and the numbers go up non-linearly. So if you want a bid a strength of 1, that costs 1 Virya. A bid strength of 2 costs 3 Virya. And at the highest bid, which is 5, costs 15 Virya. So be aware of that. If you want to stay out of the bidding, just bid the white 0. If you just want to use your agents without spending any Virya, then bid the blue 0 to add your agents to the defending side, or choose the red 0 to add your agents to the attacking side. When all players have selected a number, then everybody reveals their dial, and we add up the values for each of the two sides. As I said before, the side, if the attacking side exceeds the defending side, then the coup is successful, and the player whose turn it is then places the control marker. If the defending side is equal or higher to the attacking side, then the coup is unsuccessful and nothing else happens. All players must play the value of their bid, and all players who bid something other than the white 0 must remove their markers. So all players who bid the white 0 can leave their markers in the game, while everybody else has to remove their markers. If there were any troops in the area, if the coup was successful and there were any troops in the area, then those troops are removed. Also, at the very start of the action, as you can see on the icon here next to the coup action, the player doing his turn can swap agents before doing the action. This is useful if you want to take an area where you only have low-numbered agents, like zeros. You can swap them out at the start of your turn. For each swap you do, you must pay 1 Virya. So if, for example, I have 2 0 counters here, and I swap out one with a 0, and I swap another one with a 1, then I must spend 2 Virya for that. I cannot swap markers from the supply. I can only swap markers that are already on the map. Something to note I would like to add regarding the player involvement for the coup action, which also applies to the military takeover, the move and conflict action, which I'll explain later, is that if you belong to both the attacking side and the defending side, then you can choose which side to support. And if you belong to neither side, you don't belong to the attacking side and you don't belong to the defending side, then you can also choose which side to support if you are involved in the action by having an agent there. Also, I briefly mentioned that you can do the coup action also in major nations. A coup in a major nation works the same way as I just explained for the minor nation, but the result is slightly different. The result is, if the coup is successful, is that you get control of that major nation. So let's say I did my coup action in Lemuria here, in the home area of Lemuria. Then I compare the sum of my agents, which is 3, against the political stability value as normal. And the other players can bid against that, of course. And if successful, I get control of Lemuria. And to take control of Lemuria, I must take one of the control cubes on one of the two major nations I already control and swap that cube out with a control cube in Lemuria. And place the control cube I'm kicking out in the control spot I vacated by taking my control cube. Important to remember is that when I do that, I cannot break the other rules as I explained during setup. So there cannot be two cubes of the same color in a major nation, and you cannot share the same two major nations with another player. That may limit the options where you can take which cube you can kick out and which cube you take it away from, take your major nation away from. So keep that in mind when you do the coup action. Next, I will start explaining the major nation actions that you can do. The major nation action that is to the far left on the major nation tile is the collect Virya action. This action is pretty simple. You simply get the amount of Virya, adding it to your Virya track on your secret society tile, equal to the current value of that major nation, as indicated by this scoring tile with a hole in it. Your partner gets the same amount too. Note that your Virya track is limited to 22, so any Virya you would get over 22 is wasted. The next action on a minor nation tile is the construct building action. In the construct building action, you take any building piece in the supply and put it in one of the free building spots belonging to that major nation. This can be any of the building spots in the home area of that major nation, or any in the building spots of minor nations that belong to that major nation. If you want to build more than one building, then you can pay 5 Virya for each additional building you want to build. So for example, you build 2 buildings, the first building is for free, the second building costs you 5 Virya. The third action on the major nation tile is the recruit action. In the recruit action, you will be getting troops, warrior units of that major nation onto the map. For each area of that major nation, that means the home area, and each minor nation that major nation controls, place a number of units into that area equal to the power value of that area, including any modifications through buildings or through property tiles. So for example, if I do a recruit action for Brahmapura, then I would place 4 units into the home area, because the home area has a value of 4. So I place 4 units there. And then this other area that is controlled by Brahmapura is Zezura. It has a power value of 2, but it also has a pyramid, which increases the power value by 1. So it has a power value of 3. So I add 3 units into this area. I do that for every area of the major nation. And then, likewise with the construct building action, I can place additional units. And for each additional unit I want to place, I must pay 1 Virya. And these additional units can be placed into any areas already under the control of that major nation, including any wilderness areas. So if that major nation controls a wilderness area, then I can use the additional troops that I buy to place them in that wilderness area if I want to. The move and conflict action is the 4th action on a major nation tile. You will usually be doing this action as a result of a previous recruit action, in the same way as you do a coup action as the result of a previous intrigue action. The move and conflict action, as the name implies, consists of 2 parts. First moving, then conflict. In the first part, you will be moving your troops, and in the second part, you will be resolving any conflicts due to your movement. When moving, you can move any or all of your troops that belong to that major nation. Each unit can move 1 step to an adjacent area. Units can also cross water. For each group of units that is crossing water, when you use a straits crossing, that is the single arrow with a 1 in it, you remove 1 of those units from that group doing that crossing. You can also cross an ocean zone. So going from, take a number of units from an area, go into the ocean, and then go into any other area that belongs to the same ocean. In this case, when you cross an ocean, you have to remove 3 units from that group, from every group that crosses an ocean. Note that you cannot use a movement across an ocean just to eliminate units. At least 1 unit from that group moving across the ocean or moving across the strait has to arrive in the target area. One more thing to add about movement is that troops cannot enter the home area of a different major nation. So for example, yellow units belonging to Brahmapura could not enter the home area of Lemuria, which is red. The second part of the move and conflict action is resolving any conflicts as the result of the movement. A conflict arises wherever the troops have entered an area that does not belong to them. So this can be, for example, a minor nation that does not belong to the troops of the attacker, and any wilderness area where there are troops of a different major nation. If the first conflict in the move and conflict action is for free, if you have more than 1 conflict, you must pay for each additional conflict, namely 5 Virya. 5 Virya for each additional conflict after the first one. If there are multiple conflicts, the attacker, the player doing their turn, chooses in which order to do them. To resolve them, they are done in the same way as I previously explained with the coup action using the bidding dial. Only difference is that you count the number of troops, that you use the number of troops instead of the value of the agents. And the defending side adds the garrison value, which is the first number on the property tile on the left, instead of the political stability value. Any players who have agents in the area can also or must participate in the bidding as well. And they can choose which side to support if they belong to neither side or if they belong to both sides. Otherwise, they must support the side they belong to, but they can always bid the 0 if they want to. The agent values in this case are not counted. As I said, just the troops are counted. The attack is successful if the attacking total is higher than the defending total. In this case, the attacker must also remove 1 building and 1 agent. So if there are any buildings in the area, 1 building must be removed. And if there are any agents in the area, then 1 agent must be removed. Also, all defending troops are removed in that case. The attack is unsuccessful if the total defending value is equal to or higher than the attacking total. In this case, all the attacking units are removed instead. A thing to note: every time a building is destroyed due to this action or due to any other action, the doom wave must move 1 step forward. So anytime a building is destroyed, the doom makes 1 step forward towards the round marker. This is important for the end of the game, which I'll explain later. The final action on the major nation tile is the global conflict action. This represents a major war or atomic war which, according to the story, brought about the fall of Atlantis. The global conflict action, for the global conflict action you must first pay 7 Virya. After I've done that, there is no movement. You just compare the number of troops of that major nation to another major nation that player selects. So for example, I'm playing Brahmapura. I select to do the global conflict action here. I pay the 7 Virya, and then I select another target major nation, let's say Lemuria, and then I compare the total number of troops of the attacking major nation and the defending major nation, and the defending major nation gets to add its garrison value of its home area only to its total. So in this example, let's say Brahmapura is attacking Lemuria. Brahmapura has 6, 9, 13, and 2 is 15 troops. Lemuria has 2 troops and a garrison value of 6 in its home value, so 8. So it would be 15 against 8. Then all players are always involved in a global conflict action, and the usual restrictions apply. If you belong to one of the 2 sides only, then you can only bid for that side. If you belong to both sides or neither side, then you can choose which side to support. So all players then select their bidding dial, set it to a number, and then numbers are revealed and added up, like in the moving conflict action. There will be then 1 victorious side, so the attacking side wins if it has a higher total than the defending side, and the defending side wins if it has an equal value or higher value than the attacking side. The side that is not victorious, the defeated side, then takes losses. The player who's doing his or her turn chooses the losses in any case, even if his nation lost the conflict. And the defeated nation has to remove either 2 buildings or 2 areas, or 1 of each. Whichever of most must be selected. So the attacker, let's say the attacker lost, the attacker could remove 2 of his buildings or 2 areas. In this case, there's only 1 area, so he would have to remove 1 area and 1 building instead. The doom marker makes a step again as normal for every building destroyed. And the defeated side then also loses half of its units. Any units in areas lost, so when you lose an area, you just remove the marker. Any units in areas lost already count towards that total, and then you round down. So if I have 15 units, for example, I would lose 7 units. The areas the 2 units in this area that I already lost already count, so I'd have to remove 5 more units. If the defeated side was the underdog, so to speak, if it had a lower value than the other side, than the victorious side, then it gets a little bonus, a loot counter, which is placed in the home area of the victorious side. And this loot counter increases the value of that home area by the indicated amount. Again, the player doing their turn chooses which marker from the supply to place in the home area. These markers are also cumulative, so if there are multiple markers, they all add up to increase the value of the home area. Note that when a defeated nation loses an area, loses a minor nation, then all the units in that area are removed in any case. This may result in the defeating nation losing more than half of its units. If you're not playing an introductory game, then you will also have the special actions. Each of the property tiles that has a round protrusion at the end indicates a special action that is related to that area. So if a major nation controls that area with this property tile, then place the special action tile belonging to that property tile, which means it has the same icon in the top left corner as in the round edge of that icon. Place that tile, special action tile, next to the major nation tile. This means this will be an additional action space for that major nation. So either player can place their pawn on that special action tile and execute that action as if it were a normal action for that major nation. These special actions are usually similar to some kind of the other actions that I've explained, or it can be a unique action with an entirely different effect. The type of action is shown by the icon in the top right corner of the tile. As you see here, if it's a unique type of action, then it is a spiral symbol. Also, each special action tile has two sides. On one side, the effect is explained in icons, and on the other side, the effect is explained as text. You can use either side in the game. These actions are often quite powerful, so a strategy tip is to acquire these special actions quite quickly. Some special actions use specific components to indicate a continuous effect, which means as long as this component is in play somewhere on the board or somewhere on the pieces, then that effect applies, as explained in the rulebook. You will find detailed explanations of each special action in the table sections at the end of the rulebook. At the end of every round, which means every player has done a single turn, do the following. First, move the round marker one step forward to the right. Then move the end marker, if the white side is facing up, one step to the left. If, however, the black side of the end marker is face up, then just flip it to the other side. When does the end marker have this black side face up? So if during the course of the round a building is destroyed due to any kind of action, due to a move in conflict, for example, or if a white temple is constructed, then you flip the end marker over to the black side face up. This will cause the end marker to stall for a round. So again, if the black side is face up, you just flip it, and if the white side is face up, then you move it one step. Then you check if any of the game end conditions are met. There are three ways the game can end. Each game ending corresponds to one of the three types of objective cards in the game. The first way is the doom game end. This happens when the round marker and the doom wave meet, or the doom wave has passed the round marker. This is what happened supposedly in the story of the fall of Atlantis. The second way the game can end is the positive game ending, the ascension game end. This happens when there are 7 temples of light on the map. 7 temples of light on the map. The third way the game can end is the continuation game end, which is the neither positive nor negative game end. This happens when the end marker meets the round marker. Note that you only check the game end at the end of a round, So it does not matter if the round marker, if the doom marker, for example, was temporarily on the same position as the end marker and then moved back somehow, or if there were 7 temples of light sometime during the round, but then they were removed again, reduced to less than 7. So it does not matter if that happened during the round, only the end of the round counts for the end of the game. It can happen that multiple game endings happen at the same time, at the end of the same round. But only one of the 3 game endings can be applied. If this happens, all players reveal their objective cards. This happens in any case at the end of the game. All players reveal their objective cards and only apply the game ending which has the most cards in play. So let's say we have the doom ending and the continuation ending happening at the same time, and there are 3 doom cards and only 2 continuation cards, then only apply the doom ending, and the continuation ending does not apply, even though its conditions are met. If that is equal, so if the number of cards is also equal, then apply this priority sequence as shown on the player aid. So the Ascension game ending has the highest priority, then the Doom game ending has the second highest priority, and the Continuation game ending has the lowest priority. Now that I've explained how the game ends, I can explain the one missing action I have not explained yet. That is the repolarization action that you will find at the right end of the Secret Society tile. Firstly, to do the repolarization action, you must pay a number of Virya, and the later you do this action, the more expensive it gets.
The cost of the action is equal to the current round number. You can offset this cost by gaining 6 Virya if you take the card in the moon position from the objective card layout, even using the 6 Virya to pay for the cost if you would otherwise not have enough.
This action lets you swap out domination cards. As I explained earlier, each player has 2 cards on their hand.
When they do their repolarization action, they take 2 cards from the ones on the objective card layout and put them into their hand. Then they choose to keep any 2 of those cards and put away the 2 cards they're not keeping. The 2 cards not being kept can go either at the bottom of the deck or onto the open spots of the objective card layout in any order. You can also place 1 under the deck and 1 on the layout. Then, if there are any open spots left on the layout, fill these up by drawing new cards from the deck. If you draw multiple cards, you can first look at them and then decide which card goes on which spot.
When the game ends, players add up their points. There are 4 ways to score points in this game. First, with the nations you control. Then, if you control the leading major nation. Then for your objective cards. And finally, for any remaining Virya that you have. So the first thing you do is you increase the score for each major nation due to the temples of light it controls. For each Temple of Light a major nation controls at the end of the game, increase its score by 2. When you have done that, then you compare the 2 major nations you control and take the lesser of those 2 values as points. So for example, I am the pink player, I control Brahmapura, which is the yellow nation, and I control Atlantis, which is the black nation. Atlantis has a value of 10, Brahmapura has a value of 8, so I score 8 points for that. Then I score 2 points if I control the leading major nation, which is the nation with the highest value. If there are multiple leading major nations, then you score 1 point for each leading major nation that you control. Then you score points for domination cards. All players reveal their objective cards, as I said previously, and score points for them. You only score points for the objective card of the game ending that happened. So if, for example, an Ascension game end happened, you only score points for the Ascension cards that you have. You score points for each card that you have. So if you have 2 of those cards, then you score twice. The amount of points you score for your objective card depends on the number of players that also have such cards. So if I am the only player with this card, then I score the highest amount. If there are 2 players with such cards, then we score the medium amount, and if there are 3 or more players, then they score the lowest amount. Cards can also give Virya, and the continuation card also gives 3 Virya in any case, regardless of how the game ended.
Players also get additional Virya and points for cards they have which match with the ones on the objective card layout. For every card matching with the one on the Sun position, get 2 additional Virya. For every card matching with the one on the Eclipse position, get 1 additional point if the game ending of that card happen. These effects are cumulative.
Add these Viryas to your Virya track, and then also add the Virya according to the compensation tile you got at the beginning of the game. At the beginning of the game, all players except the starting players should have gotten a compensation tile. Just add the amount at the right side of the tile, and also lay this tile at the very end of your track, thus extending your track beyond 22, which means you can have more Virya than the normal maximum, which would be 22, and also more points accordingly. So when you've extended your track and added all the Virya, then you check the amount of points you get through your remaining Virya, which is the box. You check the box where the Virya marker is, and then you look at the green number, which is the amount of points you get for that. So for example, my marker is at the 15th position. That means I would get 5 points for that. No, 4 points for that. Players then, as I said, add up their points. The player with the highest score wins the game. If there is a tie, players compare the number of areas they control. The player who controls the most areas among the tied then wins instead. If that is also a tie, then the player who is first in turn order among the tied wins. At the back of the rulebook, you will find a table section which explains all the special effects in the game for the various components, which are the buildings, the major nation tiles, the secret society tiles, and the special action tiles. In this video, I will only explain the effects of the buildings. First of all, you have the bases, which are these brown buildings with 2 towers. The bases increase the garrison value of the area they are in by 5. This is the military defense value. Also, every time you do a recruit action for that major nation, you place an additional 3 troops into the area where the base is. Also, if there are multiple bases in the area, then you would place an additional units for each base. Next, we have the capital, which is this purple piece with a single tower. The capital increases the political stability value of an area by 5. This is the second value on the property tiles. Also, for every capital that you have, when you do the intrigue action, you can place an additional 2 agents for free anywhere. You get this effect for both of the major nations you control, for all capitals that you have. Next, we have these gray pieces, which are the factories. The factories have 2 effects. First of all, you can place an additional building for free every time you do the construct building actions. This free building can be placed anywhere in that major nation, so it does not have to be in the same area as the factory. But note that a factory has no effect in the same turn in which you place it. So if you place a factory in the construct building action, it has no immediate effect, only later. The second effect of a factory is that you get a free conflict every time you do the move and conflict action. Next are the pyramids. The pyramids increase the power value of an area they are in by 1 or by 2 if there is also a temple in the same area. So either a temple of darkness or a temple of light. Note, however, that each temple can only increase the value of 1 pyramid. So if you have the situation where you have 2 pyramids and a temple in an area, then only one of the 2 pyramids would increase the area by 2, and the other pyramid would increase the area by only 1. Next we have the Temples of Darkness. The Temples of Darkness give you 3 Virya each. For every step the dew marker moves forward, so in this direction, to the left. And finally we have the Temples of Light, which are these pieces. The Temples of Light increase the power value of the area they are in by 2, but only at the end of the game. So they have no effect in the middle of the game, other than boosting pyramids and flipping the end marker to the other side. You can also find the special effects of the buildings on the player aid on the top here in this section. I would also like to give 2 strategy tips for beginners. First of all, always try to keep a few Virya at hand. You don't want to spend all your Virya down to 0 because that makes you very vulnerable against attacks on your areas. The second tip is when selecting which archon to use on your turn for an action, consider which of the 2 actions you want to free up. Use that archon of that action that you will more likely be using in the near future. Finally, I would also like to mention that there are advanced game rules which you can use optionally. Use either one or both of these rules for an advanced game. First of all, you have special powers for the secret societies. Flip the secret society tiles to the other side with the text on it and you will see the special power for each secret society. The second rule is secret objectives for the major nations. Each major nation gets a secret objective like this, which you deal out at the start of the game, and which increases the score of that major nation by some amount. Please check the details of this rule in the rulebook. At the end of the rulebook, you will also find the rules for a campaign game of Era of Atlantis. This means you will play Era of Atlantis together with Galactic Era, first Era of Atlantis, then Galactic Era. The results of the Era of Atlantis game will modify the setup for the Galactic Era game. Please check the details for this at the end of the rulebook.